All right, guys. So this is a client project. I've used this one as an example in a previous YouTube video. I think it was my tool set cadence YouTube video. Anyway, so this is the live version of the site, and I'm recording this video on the day that WP Rocket version 3.9.05 launched, and that is also the day that WP Rocket officially announced the release of 3.9. For several weeks there, version 3.8.8 was the most stable version, it seemed. A lot of people who wanted to go ahead and roll out some version of 3.9, they were having a lot of issues. But when this one came out, I saw talk in the Facebook group, the WP Rocket Facebook group, that this one was looking promising, and I've tested it out on a couple of sites, and it's good. So let's talk WP Rocket, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about the EU image optimizer, or EWW image optimizer, and the CDN functionality that I'm rolling out on several client sites right now. So this is kind of a real life case study in optimizing a client's website. So using the testing center in Danville, Virginia, this site is hosted on Flywheel at the moment, and I want to say that the server is in Illinois. I should probably verify that for sure, know where my server is geographically located. But as you can see, it was a pretty snappy load time here on this test. Time to first byte, well within range that we want it. Again, under 100 milliseconds is like killing it. Google says, hey, let's at least make sure that's under 200 milliseconds, because the faster you can get that very first byte of information from the server, the quicker everything else can happen. So if you've got a quick time to first byte, that is just one of the first steps that you can take towards getting a page to load quickly. The onload time, which I've talked about before, is really what gives a page the sensation of loading fast. Okay, so when onload hits, if we were looking in the waterfall, when onload hits, and in GTmetrix, I am partially colorblind if I haven't mentioned that until now, but there is a colored line that represents onload, and I want to say, I'm not going to know the exact color. If I said learn more, it'll tell me what color the line actually is. But yeah, I can't always pick out colors very well. Represented by the red line. That's right. Okay. So red line in GTmetrix is the onload. So after onload finishes, anything that happens after that is what totals up to your fully loaded time. So when the user experiences that onload, that's when it feels like, hey, the page is done, or it's interactive. I can do stuff with it. And of course, the time to interactive happens a little before that, but the user really has that sense that, hey, the page is, it's ready. I can do stuff. And fully loaded comes later. So it's always a better thing to have a fast onload time, and it doesn't matter if the fully loaded is 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Just other things could be happening in the background. Maybe you've got Google Ads. Sorry for the beep. Maybe you've got Google Ads, or maybe you've got other things that are just finishing up loading in the background, and that's fine, because the user is still going to experience fast site if onload is quick. So in the waterfall for this site, if you haven't noticed it already, so all of the assets are prefixed with this CDN prefix at the front of all of those URLs, and the CDN those are coming from is the EU image optimizer. This is a phenomenal image optimization plugin that comes with a lot of great perks. I got it off of a recent AppSumo deal. I got the lifetime agency deal they were offering. It was a great price for what all you get. But one of the premium features that you get is their, they call it Easy IO CDN, which is effectively a BunnyNet CDN. And if you're not familiar with BunnyNet, it is one of the most popular and cost-effective CDNs that you can get right now. It's one of the best on the market, and it's actually the same that BunnyNet CDN, when it comes to what it does, what it can do with your images in particular, when serving them up, the functionality is basically the same as what Gijo, the man behind Flying Press, WP Speed Matters, his website, his Facebook group by the same name. This is a great plugin, which I'm also going to review at some point in this course. But in the features section, if you purchase the add-on for their Flying CDN, this is essentially a BunnyNet CDN. It's the arrangement that Gijo has worked out with the BunnyNet people. But yeah, your images can be converted to WebP on the fly. If the browser that is requesting it is compatible, that browser is going to get WebP on the fly. And if WebP is not compatible with the browser, then the standard JPEG or PNG is going to be delivered instead. The on-the-fly image compression, the resizing, so automatically resizing the image to using that source set that's that responsive images stuff. The best size image is going to be served to the device, so you don't have overly sized, just crazy large images being loaded in on something like a mobile device or something. And it does other assets too. I'm referencing some of the image stuff, but up until I started testing out the EasyIO CDN, I failed to realize that it was also doing some asset stuff, just like Flying CDN. So yeah, all the JavaScript and CSS assets are also able to be delivered by that BunnyNet CDN, which is really snappy and really quick. I can't English. But yeah, so the only thing that's actually loading from the domain on this example is the HTML document. It's just that initial lookup, and everything else, all the other assets, are coming from that CDN that is both delivering the images and other assets. If we go to CSS, see the bulk of the requests, 26 out of 38 are CSS files. And when you go to JavaScript, the only JavaScript that's coming in is from the EU image optimizer. Still feels weird to say. And as the lazy loaded sizes JavaScript that's helping the browser know what size image needs to be delivered, just as it's kind of working together with the CDN. And I've still got some work to do, I think, on the fonts on this one. For some reason, these do seem to be taking longer than anything else, but still considering that the onload time is, right there at about half a second in this particular test. You could run this 10 other times and it might be between that and 1 second or something, and that's fine. But I might chase down what's happening there. And then images, I've still got, so some of these images are not even optimized. These are still pretty dang big. So this is the homepage image that is very large. It's really too tall for its container, but it was the image the client provided, so I just stuck it in there. And we did try a parallax background for that section at one point, which required a taller image for the effect to work. So that can still be replaced, but all that considered, so this page is not even maxed out per se when it comes to the speeds that we're getting, and it's still crazy fast. And again, that's in part because of the WP Rocket version 3.9.05 and its new JavaScript delay functionality that now delays all JavaScript. I'm going to show you that in just a moment. But also the image stuff and other assets all being delivered by the EasyIO CDN, virtually identical to the Flying Press CDN, the BunnyNet stuff. Yeah, so if you are familiar with WP Rocket enough, or have used it long enough that I think it was last year that I think it was version 3.7, they rolled out this functionality where you could take all of these resource hints or these chunks of a URL, is kind of like maybe the tail end of a URL belonging to some asset. There were a bunch of these just pre-filled, just kind of known scripts that were safe to fully delay whenever a page is loading, because some of these assets are not critical to the page actually rendering. So you could basically wait until onload, and the page basically, it looks done, and then all these other things, all these bits of JavaScript could run in the background and not be render blocking resources. So I mean, this list up until, I want to say it's either at this point or this point, it's like all of these were some of the defaults that were just pre-filled for you. And if I come into the back end of the site now and look at WP Rocket, so version 3.88, and maybe there was some other little version in there where this was the case, but under the file optimization tab, if you came all the way down to the very bottom where there was the delay JavaScript execution, that's where all those default values were included. Well, now in version 3.9.05, basically all the JavaScript is just treated as if it is safe to delay, and you basically now just have to input things that might break the site if they are delayed. So now, rather than having to provide the list of things that you want included in the JavaScript delay functionality, now it's the opposite. It's, hey, everything's going to be delayed unless you say otherwise. So you might only have to plop in maybe a handful, maybe it's one or two pieces of JavaScript or those resource hints, because everything else is just going to work automatically. And I've found it working, perfectly on any site I've tested it on thus far. But yeah, so instead of having to comb through and manually sort out, hey, what pieces of JavaScript might I be able to delay here, which is when this course is going to launch. I was not anticipating this feature being ready yet, and so I was going to be offering some teaching around how you would do this with WP Rocket version 3.8.8, where you would have to look through your waterfall chart and identify any scripts that you needed to put in. So this is the list that I had copied from my matchlessweb.com website. All of these were some of the assets I had identified as being things that could be delayed without breaking the site. And so I had come up with that list by looking through my waterfall at any of the JavaScript that was loading, and I would go through and basically trial and error, try one thing. If it broke the site, okay, we know that one doesn't work, let's try another. And so that was pretty manually intensive. So I'm really relieved that it's not that difficult anymore, because the bar is just lowered even more, like the barrier to entry to be able to get a website loading really quickly. Gosh, it has improved leaps and bounds with this new version of WP Rocket, because so much of it is actually automatic now. Now, granted, all right, so I didn't mention this yet, but this website example is a Cadence website. So it's already a lean, Gutenberg-friendly block builder website. And I'm just guessing that sites that might be using page builders, your Divi, Elementor, that those could have issues with some of the JavaScript delays. I've seen some people commenting in the WP Rocket Facebook group about some of those functionality not working for them, and they've maybe had to identify some scripts to make sure to exclude, making sure that those still or that those are left out of the delay, so they're still included during that onload phase, so that they are still render blocking, but they're required to be that way so that they don't break the site. And similarly with the old site, or with the old version of WP Rocket, so 3.88, that was the stable version, some of these exclusions had to be in there for exclusions from deferral. So that's this little area now, and it looks like these are automatically selected now, because these were they in my list? These two were. Okay, so these two stayed. So I'm just assuming WP Rocket is just kind of smart enough to recognize what assets actually still need to be left out of being deferred. So now we're talking deferred, not just not the delay. So deferred just meaning, hey, instead of the JavaScript running in the head of the HTML document, they run in the footer. So sometimes also called asynchronous loading. So this is the stuff that, in this example, you're not letting get pushed into the footer. This is still on pages where toolset blocks or toolset types are being loaded, then these things will still load as render blocking just because it needs to be there so it doesn't break the site. Maybe toolset will make that not the case in some future update, but anyway, all this to say, it's really cool stuff, this new version of WP Rocket, and I've tested just a little bit the remove unused CSS feature. It is still in beta, and with any plugin I've seen thus far that's trying to use this functionality of removing unused CSS, it's like they get it right, which is still a big feat. Get it right like 95% of the time. There might still just be some wonky stuff. When I first toggled it on to try it for me on my Matchless website, the header, so this is a generate press header. It's not a block header. It's one of the older headers I haven't actually converted into a generate blocks header. But some of the text got wonky there. So what I would need to do if I want to try to use that feature, I've got to go in and see maybe what are the CSS files that I need to actually put into the so if you select this, you could basically, I think it gives you a extra little block where you can say, hey, let's exclude these bits of CSS from being attempted to be removed. Because this is basically, it scans your site and looks for different CSS selectors in your style sheet, compares that against the page that's being loaded. If the page that's being loaded does not contain those selectors, then those selectors and the associated CSS is removed from the style sheet, and you get a new style, I can't say the word, you get a new style sheet generated that contains only what is assumed to be the needed or necessary CSS for the whole page. So that's a feature I'm still going to play with some, but I think any of the sites that I've tried this on yet, they've just been scooting, as we say here in Mississippi. This is a really cool page speed test that I've just recently come across. So if I've not shared this at this point in the course yet, fastorslow.com. It's made by the team at WordFence. It's the real deal, y'all. This is a cool test. So this test from 18 different locations around the world, just kind of back to back to back. So rather than just doing a single test in one spot, you get test results across, the world. And so if you're trying to see what is global performance looking like, if you do e-commerce or you provide client services to people all around the globe, you want your website performing well anywhere in the world. And honestly, that's part of what the inspiration for this course was. This hey, this blog post that I had was about hey, we get our websites loading in less than 1 second worldwide. So if I just drop in the same client's website that I've been referencing so far, seeing some of these different test locations being loaded up here as those results come in. So a year ago, back when I made the original blog post and the YouTube videos about this Holy Grail configuration, I was using .com tools for the global testing, and I think at the time they had maybe up to 24 testing locations worldwide, but they've since revamped their website, and now they've got it to where if you're not a logged in user, you can only test 3 locations worldwide at a time. If you are a logged in user on a free tier, you can do 5 at a time. So they've really kind of cut back on how much you can get for free out of them. But right now, this tool is free. And don't know if y'all see that right there, but those are several 100s. You get a general performance overview. And if you hit this first byte, I'm always curious, what is time to first byte looking like? You can see, what places in the world or what testing locations, your time to first byte was acceptable under 200 milliseconds. By the Google standards says like, hey, that's ideally, let's be under 200. But the places looking like they are, particularly far from the origin server, this India, Bahrain. I know some of these bars are green, even though they're, up into the mid 300s. It still kind of scored them well, but you could come through and look at, there's just some fun little graphics and things. I love this test. This is fun. But you can see the core web vitals as they were measured at that particular location worldwide, yada, yada, yada. And chances are, if I ran this test again, which I will, because running the test the first time, so if this is a good teaching point. If you clear your server cache, if you clear your Cloudflare, or whatever CDN you might be using, if you clear those caches worldwide, well, the next time you request your website from any location in the world, the first visit's going to be slower. So a good rule of thumb, if you, again, are trying to cater to a large audience worldwide, you can preload your cache by running some test like this, where there are multiple locations around the world that are going to be pinged, shortly after you've purged your cache. You effectively are just putting out a request in some different locations in the world, where all of a sudden you're going to have a cached version of, whatever page you've put out there. That cached version is now going to exist in that location, geographically speaking. So if, someone in the nearby geographical area requests the website, rather than it having to first go back and look for the website on the origin server, the nearest the nearest data center is going to be able to deliver that website much more quickly. So that's called preloading your cache. And did this improve any? Nope, not in this example. Maybe some did, I don't know, but some of these are still pretty significant, and some of this could be due to network traffic or something. But one more look at an example of preloading cache. So this is the key CDN performance test, and time to first byte is in the far right corner. So I ran the test once before starting the video. And so some of these that took, really long, definitely a first visit for some of those locations. But after having tested it once, if I do a repeat test, the time to first byte to those locations, or to all the locations, should be pretty consistent, and it should be a lot lower, especially for those problematic locations. And key CDN, this test seemed to be not really cooperating earlier today, and so let me just see if I can get it to kick off again. There we go. Okay, so as those different, maybe it's like 13 locations kick off. Still got one straggler, two stragglers here that aren't hitting where we want them to be, but who knows? Still great time to first byte most other places. So, okay, so that's a long way around of just geeking out a little bit on the newest version of WP Rocket. That is going to be the version that, as of this course being launched, that's going to be the main version that I'll be teaching around and have now just taught around. But I will also include some, if someone for any reason is using maybe the legacy, now a legacy version of WP Rocket, if you're still on 3.8.8 and are trying to do the more manually intensive combing through your waterfall, selecting JavaScript, and just looking through and testing, you don't want to do it, guys. It's it was one of the reasons I thought this course was going to be needed, just to help people see how you do some of this manually intensive stuff. But hey, WP Rocket is coming in to save the day and keep us from having to do some of that stuff. So I'm very pleased with that. I'm very pleased with this fast or slow test. So check that out. Let me know what you guys think of that one. And yeah, if you don't already have Image Optimizer, try that dude out, because you can get access to a really great CDN. And if by chance that AppSumo deal is still going, getting a price locked in for life, where you get a good amount of bandwidth for CDN usage, to where you're not paying for it month in, month out based on your utilization, like you would using something maybe like the Flying CDN, which I think it's like a minimum of $5 a month you might pay, or maybe you've got to put $5 at least onto your account, but you might be using like pennies a month depending on your traffic. You just might not have a ton of bandwidth. But I think like there's a $5 minimum or something like that you've got to pay. yeah, okay. So we'll look at Flying Press maybe in another video, because this is a really cool performance plugin too. It's just younger than, WP Rocket's been around for a while, but this is a great plugin, and we're going to talk about this one in another video. But for now, that is a overview of the things I already said it's an overview of. Okay, next video.